This is not a ghost story, not a murder case, and not fiction. Everything you're about to hear is based on one of the most disturbing real-life medical disasters ever documented. It is the story of a man who received a dose of radiation so extreme that many experts believed survival was impossible. Yet he remained alive for 83 days. The terrifying part is that it all started with an ordinary workday. September 30th, 1999, Japan. The morning was quiet. Employees arrived at work, checked schedules, and prepared for another shift. Among them was a technician we will call Kenji. Nobody knew that before sunset, his life would change forever. The facility processed nuclear fuel, and every safety rule existed for a reason. But the plant had fallen behind schedule. Management wanted faster production. Workers felt pressure. Slowly, shortcuts became normal. At first, nothing happened. Then, nothing happened again. Eventually, people stopped seeing the danger. That belief would prove catastrophic. On that morning, workers prepared a uranium solution. The official process was slow. The unofficial process was faster. So they used the faster method. For a while, everything appeared normal. Then, at approximately 10:35 a.m., the room suddenly filled with an eerie blue flash. Witnesses later described it as almost beautiful. For a split second, nobody understood what they were seeing. Then alarms erupted throughout the facility. Workers froze. Some stared, others ran. But the damage had already been done. Kenji had been standing closest to the source. Within minutes, he felt nauseous. His body became weak. A burning sensation spread through him. Breathing became difficult. He knew something was wrong. Emergency responders transported the workers to hospitals. At first, doctors believed they were dealing with severe radiation exposure. Then the test results arrived. The room went silent. The numbers didn't make sense. Several doctors assumed the equipment was malfunctioning. The tests were repeated. The results came back exactly the same. The machines were working perfectly. The radiation dose was real. One physician later admitted he had never seen values that extreme in a living patient. Yet somehow the patient was sitting upright in bed, talking, answering questions, and even smiling occasionally. Looking at Kenji, you would never guess the nightmare unfolding inside his body. Doctors immediately began additional examinations. What they discovered frightened them. Radiation had damaged his cells on a catastrophic level. The body's natural repair systems were failing. The biological instructions responsible for creating healthy new cells had been devastated. One specialist compared it to trying to rebuild a city after every blueprint had been burned. The structure might still be standing, but eventually it would collapse. The terrifying question wasn't whether Kenji had been injured. The terrifying question was how he was still alive. At first, he remained optimistic. He asked doctors when he could go home. He spoke with family members. He joked with nurses. The people around him smiled politely, but privately, many were already preparing for the worst. Days passed. A specialized medical team was assembled. Experts traveled from across the country. Experimental treatments were discussed. Advanced procedures were considered. Nobody wanted to give up. The first goal was simple: keep him alive. The second goal was much harder: find a way to help his body recover. Doctors attempted therapies that had rarely been used before. Blood products were administered. Specialists monitored every change. For a brief moment, there seemed to be hope. Kenji remained conscious. His family believed the worst might be behind them. Unfortunately, The worst had barely begun. As the days continued, signs of deeper damage started appearing. His immune system weakened dramatically. Healthy cells stopped replacing damaged ones. The body was losing a battle that it couldn't fight. Every day doctors reviewed new laboratory results, and every day the news became worse. Still, they continued searching for answers. Researchers followed the case closely. Hospitals shared information. Experts exchanged theories. Everyone wanted to know whether modern medicine could overcome such unprecedented damage. Weeks passed. Then came another devastating realization. The injury wasn't stabilizing. It was progressing. The destruction caused by radiation continued moving through his body, slowly and relentlessly. The body's repair mechanisms were failing one after another. Yet Kenji continued talking about the future. He discussed plans. He wanted to know when he would leave the hospital. The doctors struggled with those conversations because they knew something he didn't. The future he imagined was becoming impossible. By this point, news of the case had spread far beyond the hospital. Medical professionals around the world followed updates. Researchers recognized that they were witnessing one of the most extraordinary cases in modern history. But behind the headlines was a family living through a nightmare. Every visit became emotionally exhausting. Every conversation carried uncertainty. Every apparent improvement created hope, and every setback destroyed it. Doctors explored increasingly aggressive treatment options. Nothing produced lasting results. Temporary improvements would appear, then disappear. Hope, disappointment. Hope, disappointment. The cycle repeated. As the weeks became months, reality became impossible to ignore. Recovery was no longer the objective. Machines supported vital functions. Medication controlled symptoms. Medical teams worked around the clock. Yet everyone understood the truth. The body was slowly shutting down. One system after another. One function after another. The process was gradual, and that somehow made it even more disturbing. Doctors later described the emotional burden as enormous. They were trained to save lives, trained to solve problems, but some problems have no solution. Even then, nobody wanted to stop trying. The family continued asking doctors to do everything possible. Every available option was explored. Every reasonable treatment was attempted. Nothing changed the outcome. Nurses celebrated small victories. Doctors worried constantly. Everyone hoped for a miracle, but miracles never arrived. Eventually, a difficult meeting was held. The doctors gathered with family members. The discussion was heartbreaking. Every major treatment had been attempted. Every realistic option had been exhausted. The prognosis was clear. There was no path toward recovery. Family members listened quietly. Some cried. The long battle was finally over. Doctors understood they had witnessed one of the most extraordinary and tragic medical cases of their careers. For the family, however, it wasn't a medical case. It was a husband, a son, a brother, a loved one who would never return home. In the months that followed, investigations examined what had happened. Safety procedures had been ignored. Standards had been relaxed. Dangerous shortcuts had become routine. No single mistake caused the disaster. It was the result of many decisions, many warnings, many opportunities to stop what was coming. Each decision seemed small at the time. Together, they created catastrophe. And perhaps that is the most frightening lesson in this story. Disasters rarely arrive without warning. They build slowly. One shortcut, one ignored rule, one decision made under pressure, then another, and another, until eventually the consequences become unavoidable. More than 2 decades later, People still study this case because it reveals how fragile safety can become when people grow comfortable. It reminds us that rules are often written in blood. Someone suffered before the rule existed. Someone paid the price. And when those rules are ignored, history has a way of repeating itself. Today, the story remains one of the most discussed industrial tragedies in modern Japanese history. And one question still lingers. If someone had simply followed the rules that morning, would any of this have happened? Would Kenji have gone home that evening? No one can answer those questions. This has been Broadcast 13. The investigation did not end with the funeral. Regulators began reviewing years of records and discovered that the warning signs had been there all along. Reports had been filed, concerns had been raised, small procedural violations had been noticed and dismissed because nothing bad had happened before. That false sense of security became one of the central lessons of the tragedy. Experts later explained that people often become comfortable around risk when disaster fails to appear immediately. Each uneventful day reinforces the illusion, until one day, the odds finally catch up. Former employees would later describe a culture where speed increasingly mattered more than caution. Nobody expected a catastrophe. Nobody arrived at work expecting to become part of history. Yet history was exactly what awaited them. Years later, universities, safety organizations, and industrial engineers continued studying the incident. The case became a warning taught to future generations, not because it involved advanced technology, but because it revealed a timeless human weakness: the tendency to ignore danger when danger becomes familiar. Even now, when experts discuss preventable industrial disasters, this case is often mentioned. It serves as a reminder that safety rules are not obstacles to productivity. They are barriers standing between normal life and irreversible tragedy. Perhaps that is why the story continues to resonate decades later. People see themselves in it. A warning ignored because everything seems fine. Most of the time, nothing happens. But sometimes, the consequences are unimaginable. And when that happens, there is no way to rewind the clock.